Yo, what is going on, everybody? Welcome again to another episode of Bring Your A Game. You better believe it. It's your boy, Austin, in the house. You can catch me on Twitter at Austin Snyder 90. And as always, with
with Amar. You can catch me on Twitter and on Instagram, Amar underscore 206. We're back for another episode. I'm losing count. I can't remember what episode number it is, but this
I
is
think
us
number
again.
five. I
Is this
think we're
five?
on lucky number five. Yeah,
Okay,
I
cool.
don't
Yeah,
know what makes number five lucky, but
it's
that's
a
just
because it's a round number. People like
there.
numbers that
Yep.
end with 0 and 5. So yeah, so it's us once again, the monsters of the Midway, aka Team Hell No, aka Stockton and Malone. See, you thought that I was going to be Malone, right? And you thought he was going to be Stockton because that's being simple.
Right.
He's Malone because he actually like lifts weights, and I'm going to be Stockton because I like to set him up. So I
Right.
set him up with these questions, for
Always.
the slam dunk of the answers. So
Yes.
with that, to get into the first topic for this week. And Brooklyn Dot or see, I already messed up. The LA Dodgers. The
Hey,
LA
before we get into this real quick, I gotta say, people in Brooklyn, I
mhm.
give you, not that it matters, but you get every pass in the world to celebrate, especially you old heads, like get every pass in the world to celebrate that Dodgers World Series. I mean, like without a doubt, 100%. If you were there watching them back in the Brooklyn days, pour one out for this team and enjoy it.
Yeah.
So I'll
Yeah,
just get
that's
off my
kind of
soapbox on
and
that.
that's kind of getting into what I was going to ask you about. Like, there are a lot of like old school Brooklyn Dodgers fans that are, happy that the LA Dodgers won. There's also, like kids of those fans, they were right. Their parents watched the Brooklyn Dodgers, grandparents watched the Brooklyn Dodgers. And so, they're Brooklyn and New York people, but they're rooting for the LA Dodgers. What I'm wondering is that something you can do? I mean, both of us were from the Seattle area. We're Sonics fans. They left for Oklahoma City. They're the Thunder now. Do you root for your city's old team after they leave? Can you do? Is that something that you can do, or is
So
that kind of weird?
personally, I think it's typically a pass, right? Like you do, hey, I'm just following the team that, because you follow the players and you understand the dynamic and history of the franchise, etc. For myself personally, the minute that our
Hmm.
Seattle Supersonics got stolen and moved down to the Oklahoma City Thunder, um, I want nothing but terrible, terrible things to happen in that franchise. If they could never win a game ever again, I would be ecstatic. Right. And that has far more to do with the owner than anything else. And those of you who have at all followed that story or watched the YouTube videos or you've done the research, I typically don't like referencing YouTube videos whenever I'm talking about, because there is so much question that goes into that. But my point is that yeah, that whole like I'm out on the Thunder,
Hmm.
and I hated it because man, I'm a very big fan of Kevin Durant, and so when he left to go to Golden State, I was happier for the fact that they lost such a huge superstar and legend in Kevin Durant than anything else because I knew damn well that the Westbrook couldn't carry that team. But yeah, I think it's okay, especially like with the Dodgers, for instance. I mean, the I don't quite remember the circumstances to them being moved. Do you remember what they were?
No, I mean, I'm not that old, but no, no,
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming
Yeah,
just
and
someone
that's
bought the team that wanted to move into LA.
right. And so, but I mean, for a lot of, especially with baseball, because baseball in general, I mean, like they definitely, for the true fans, have probably some of the, if not the most diehard true fan base of
Mm-hmm.
all of the sports. I just, like I said earlier, I absolutely think that they should celebrate this victory. And for the people who watched those Brooklyn Dodger years and followed that team, and a lot of people followed that team to LA,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think it's awesome and it's great. And by all means, show the pride and joy in it, just as if, they were still back in Brooklyn. Now, if the Oklahoma City Thunder won, I would be incredibly upset and would wish, again, nothing but just horrible things, for that
Mm-hmm.
franchise as a whole. I can't stand the Thunder. Oh, I hate it so much. It's just a reminder, just a
Yeah.
grim reminder.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think like baseball is kind of the most deeply rooted in that, my parents rooted for this team, my grandparents rooted for this team, and that fandom is like passed down through generations. I mean, it happens in all sports, but I feel like in baseball, that's really
Oh,
a
very
big
much so.
thing.
I mean, it's an
Yeah,
inherited, like, I mean, yeah, it's got to be. I would
yeah.
say that probably. I know a lot of households that dad's a Seahawks fan, mom's a Packers fan, and the kid
Hmm.
roots for the Niners or whatever, and but when it comes to baseball, nope, they're all Mariner fans. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? So,
yeah.
like, without a doubt, it is very deeply rooted.
Yeah, so I've never been someone that's really like stuck on fan loyalty and like you have to root for this team, for the local team, or if this team was your favorite team growing up, you have to stick with that team, you can't switch teams. Like a lot of people put a lot of rules and they're real sticklers about that kind of stuff. I'm just like, root for who you want to root for. Like, it's just
Right.
sports, it's not that big a deal. You're not going to get disowned. Well, some people will, but you're not going to get disowned if you root for a different team. And like, if someone tries to insult you because like oh, you used to root for this team, now you root for this team, it's just like, so what, who cares? So yeah, so I mean, with that, anyone that wants to root for the Dodgers, but they're in New York, or they feel like, well, I shouldn't root for them because they betrayed our city or whatever. Like, that doesn't matter. You root for who you want to root for. I totally understand, Brooklyn fans, New York fans being into the Dodgers. I actually I didn't even wear this on purpose, but just
It just
happens to be
kind of
what I'm wearing
worked. Yeah.
today.
Well, and here's what I'll tell you,
Wearing
man,
my,
is
my
at the
Sonic
end of the
stuff.
day, like we watch these sports for entertainment,
Right.
and like I definitely used to be one of those people that like, oh, if you're a bandwagoner, this and that, and talk all the
Mm-hmm.
crap, you know what I mean? But as I've grown older, I've matured a bit, and I've just come to realize that these things, they're games, they're entertainment, they're
Mm-hmm.
fun, they're kind of a break from reality. I mean, all of these things. And so it just kills me that, like, you shouldn't be shamed just because every year you're voting for or you're rooting for the best team. You
Mm-hmm.
know why? Because at the end of the day, what you're saying is that, like, this team to me is the funnest to watch, and I'm having a blast doing it. And if you
Mm-hmm.
want to support them by buying jerseys and memorabilia and whatever else, then more
Mm-hmm.
power to you, man. I mean, by all
Yeah.
means, you should be able to do that without being subjected to just all this harassment and crap talking, especially if you're somebody who knows what they're talking about. Because
Mm-hmm.
here's the reality: other than a select, probably a handful, or at least a small percentage of minority of like actual players, guys like Kobe and Russell Wilson
Mm-hmm.
and God, I can't even think off the top of my head, but just those guys that, like, that they're passionate about their franchise. But even then, like, these guys, here's a little insider scoop, and Amar, you probably know this from talking to the many professional athletes that you have. They don't give a shit. They honestly don't. Like, tell me I'm wrong. You know what
No,
I mean? Like,
you're not wrong.
Yeah, to them, these franchises are nothing more than how we think of our bosses or our superiors or the
Hmm.
companies that we work for.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, yeah, if a guy spent 15 years on the same squad, absolutely he wants to see them be successful. But most of these guys, like I said,
Hmm.
other than a small percentage of people, most of these guys do not care. They
Hmm.
watch these sports just how like I watch basketball. Ever since the Supersonics left, I can't say that I love any one particular team. I love
Right.
storylines, I
Hmm.
love good teams, and I love players. So what do? I root for particular players and I follow storylines, and I may root for a certain team to win. Like I wanted LA to win this year, the Lakers, and I've said that numerous times, but solely for the fact that to me personally, that was the best, most interesting storyline to have happened. You know what I mean? Like that's what I watch it for, and that's what I enjoy it for, because I like watching these guys like LeBron James and Anthony Davis playing at their best.
Hmm.
That's just what I enjoy. And that's how most of these players see it. They have homies on a bunch of other teams, all of it.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And so they're just enjoying playing or watching their friends succeed or whatever.
Right.
So
Yeah. I have a lot of friends who are New York Knicks fans, and you know, if your team is not good and not entertaining, you shouldn't have to feel like I have to stick with them. I have to root for them. I
right.
can't turn my back on them. Like it's not, if it's not fun to watch them play, then don't watch them
Where do
play.
you think
You
that
know what I
comes
mean?
from? I mean, I get that there,
Hmm.
especially for those of us who played sports growing up, and there's the camaraderie and the brotherhood or
Yeah.
sisterhood or whatever. But like, man, there's
I
just such a deep rooted, and I'm going to bite my tongue a little bit because I don't want to say the wrong things when it comes to this, but like it's just the mentality is, and I know we're kind of getting a little bit too deep into this, but man, the mentality just blows me away. Like
yeah.
these
It's this.
franchises
Mhm.
at the end of the day don't give a shit about these players,
Right.
right? A guy will come and play a playoff basketball game the day after his sister just got freaking killed. And then guess what? Cut him in the offseason because
Hmm.
they don't feel like he's going to take them to win a championship that's going to bring them more ad revenue, etc.
Hmm.
So I just don't
Yeah.
get where the disconnect is.
I do this multiple times a year when people talk about, this athlete's not loyal. Why isn't he loyal to the team? Why isn't he loyal to the city? Why isn't he loyal to the fan base? I present a blank piece of paper and I go, this is a list of the most loyal franchises in pro sports.
Right.
It's blank because there ain't none. Pro sports franchises are not loyal. They are a business. And a lot of fans have this expectation that athletes need to be loyal to the team, but the team will trade that guy or cut that guy when it's convenient for them. And just for the athlete, when it's convenient for him to leave to go play for someone else, just like as regular people, some people are loyal to the companies they work for, but for most of us are like, we're just looking for the next best opportunity.
Right.
And if that comes up with some other company, you're going to take it. And it doesn't matter if it was the rival company of the company you just worked for, or it's in a different city or something like that. I see athletes the same way. Something I always say is athletes are people too,
Yes.
and they're not, they shouldn't be held to like different standards of employer loyalty or anything like that.
Well, and that's what
So,
kills me
mhm,
is like the especially fans,
mhm,
actually only
mhm,
fans.com. No, I'm just kidding. But only fans will berate, vilify, talk down about players who either do choose to leave for the money
mhm,
or whatever, but yet the franchise, I mean, they'll get a free pass.
mhm.
Say a minority amount of fans will, are realists and say, hey, that's a bad move, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, guess what? They're still rooting for that team every Sunday or every time a basketball game's on or all, 6 million baseball games that play throughout the season, whatever. So it just, it's never made sense to me how you always like you justify or whatever, like the team getting rid of the player. But if the player, decides, hey, I have an opportunity to build the type of generational wealth that I could have never even imagined, even when I came into the league, how can you demonize a guy or vilify a guy for doing that?
Or even if it's just something as simple as like, I want to just take a new opportunity. I want to see a different part of the world. I want to live somewhere else. I want to know what it's like to play with this guy or play with this team that maybe I liked them growing up. Or, just like, and again, going back to athletes being people, like, these decisions aren't just competition-based decisions. Okay. I'll go to Kevin Durant, right? Everybody hated on him for, how could you go to the team to beat your team in the playoffs? There was so many other factors, I think, for Kevin Durant in deciding to go to Golden State. And it wasn't just basketball. It was business. It was marketing. It was where does he want to live?
Lifestyle, everything.
And somebody's got, like, if you're married, where does your wife want to live? Where do you want your kids to go to school? There's the state tax issue, with, athletes going to Texas and Florida, places that don't have
Miami,
state tax. Like, it's not just like this, video game thing where all they care about is the game and the competition. And that's where these are major life decisions. These aren't just names on your fantasy team, and these aren't just, characters on Madden or 2K. Like, these are real people with real life.
And that's where people tend to forget they get paid millions of dollars just to play a game. Well, no, they get paid millions of dollars to, and I've said this before, I think I said it even 2 weeks ago, or maybe even our first episode. These guys get paid millions of dollars to wake up before everybody else and start working out and beating up their body and preparing mentally and physically and sweating and everything else. Yeah. And then they're going to bed typically past most people because guess what? They've stayed up all day practicing and being just as perfect at their craft as they possibly can. They entertain us.
They get paid millions of dollars to be consumed by the game.
Right.
Not to play the game. It annoys me when people talk like athletes only work on game day. Like when you see, like someone signs a big contract and they'll break and people will break it down.
Right. To every pitch or
and they'll say stuff like, he only works 16 days a year, or he only works 82 days a year. Like, no, he works every day.
Yeah.
Like it's not just on game day when they're at work. It's, practice. It's training.
Dude, have you seen everything. Russell Wilson's dietary regimen?
No.
Oh my God!
I imagine
we are getting too deep into this, but I'm gonna mention this to you, or we're gonna talk about this really fast, and then we'll move on to But it's nuts, dude. It's absolute and it is so. It's 9 meals a day, 4,800 calorie diet to cut weight. Again, 4,800 calories just to cut weight. His daily meal plan, pre-breakfast, is a tablespoon of almond butter and a tablespoon of jam. That's just 1 tablespoon. Put it in his mouth, eat it. For breakfast, 2 cups of cooked oatmeal, 6 whole eggs, fruit, and a chicken breast. Snack number 1 is fruit and exactly 12 almonds. Lunch is 8 ounces of protein with a yam or a cup of rice or a potato and a vegetable. Second lunch is 8 ounces exactly of protein with a yam or a cup of rice or a potato and a vegetable. Snack number 2, again, is a fruit and exactly 12 almonds. Snack number 3 is a fruit and exactly 12 almonds and a whey protein. Dinner, fish or steak and vegetables or salad. Snack number 4 is fruit and a tablespoon of molasses or shredded wheat, applesauce, almond butter, and jam. And that's his daily meal plan to cut weight and stay in the absolute best physical condition that he can 365 days a year. Could you imagine following that? Could you imagine just
I didn't hear
never diverting from that?
Yeah, I didn't hear Red Robin in there.
Right.
I didn't hear McDonald's
Starbucks
in there. Yeah. I didn't hear cheat meal in there. I didn't hear, oh, like, let me get a Coke or a Pepsi.
Right.
Like,
Right.
yeah, that's insane. And that's the dedication that a lot of athletes have. And that's why they get paid so much. Also, because it's the entertainment industry and, fans, we feel
right. It's just people forget,
Mm-hmm.
like, in that I've done the hardcore bodybuilder diets and et cetera. You can find me on Instagram at Austin Snyder 90, and you'll
That's
see
why I
some
called him Karl
pictures.
Malone.
Right. I mean, you'll see the pictures. There was a point in time in my life when I was Austin Snyder 12. I apologize, but a point in time in my life where I was working out very heavily and following a pretty freaking strict diet plan. Not that though. I could never do that. Like, I'll admit that I have like no interest at all in doing that.
I got one question about that. I know we want to move on, but did Russell? Is it 12 almonds because like 12's the 12th man? Is that
it could
that
be
why it's 12
very
almonds?
well?
I can see it. Yeah,
like
yeah.
I could see Russell doing that for sure. But the reality is that at the end of the day, it's probably all because guys like this, like when I was working out heavy like that, you didn't count calories. You counted macros. So you counted your dietary fiber, you counted your protein, you counted your saturated fat, you counted, you know what I mean? All those other things that you see on that nutrition label, aside from calories, all of that is what you count, you know what I mean? And then you tweak, and there's a bunch of apps out there that will give you exact, this is how much one almond, these are the macros and the nutritional value, etc. And so you can kind of equate that. Though I wouldn't be surprised if the trainer was like, well, at 10 almonds, you're at your exact number. And he's like, well, make it 12. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Go Hawks. Yeah.
Yeah, go Hawks. Yeah.
No, and one more thing I want to say about, fandom, fan behavior. I have a lot of hats. Anyone that knows me knows that. I wear hats all the time. I have a bunch of different hats, because I pick them off of, color, style. Oh, I just like that hat. The team doesn't really matter. And so I noticed that, when I go out and I have any hat on, people assume that I'm a fan of that team. And they'll be like, oh, like I have a New York Jets hat, right? Because I need a green hat. I like the color, that color of green. And I've worn it. And people have been like, oh, like you're a Jets fan? And I'm like, no. And they're like, well, and then it's this look like, why? Yeah, like, why are you wearing a Jets hat? And I'm like, because I need a green hat,
Because it's a goddamn fashion statement. I mean, come on, buddy.
Yeah. I remember, what was it, Colin Kaepernick? I remember back when he was playing, he wore a Miami Dolphins hat. And he plays for the Niners.
People free.
It was this big deal. Like, why are you wearing a Dolphins hat? And he's just like, I just wanted to wear the hat. So
yeah, I like the color. I like the hat.
Anyways. Kind of related to what we were talking about. But I just want to go back to your early days as a sports fan. When do you think that you realize that sports is a business? That's the phrase we hear all the time. This is a business. Do you remember when that really sunk in for you, like as a young fan?
I guess I kind of always understood the concept to a degree, but I mean, like when the Supersonics left, that was like a huge kind of like, hey, this is a business. This is a corporation. Yeah. This is not, not through the rose-colored glasses that you've perceived it as, and so this is whatever. But being a very avid gamer, I grew up playing the Maddens and the 2Ks and that kind of stuff. And my favorite game mode has and will always be the franchise modes or the GM modes or whatever. And so, I mean, when that's all you've kind of surrounded yourself with, especially playing these games, you get a pretty quick understanding as to the business of it, and I'm sure anybody watching this who grew up playing Madden or 2K or whatever, especially the football games, the 2K football games, you've been in that situation where you trade and sign every top talent guy that you possibly can. And then you go into the next season and they're like, yeah, sorry, you can't start your season because, you're $175 million over the cap space. So like, sorry, and then you're having to start to cut guys and trade guys. And, it's funny because Dylan and I, we were a part of this Madden online league last year, and we had a buddy of ours who, was trading every mid 80s talent that he could for first round draft picks, and to just constantly keep his team stacked. Well, then he got to a situation where he was just super over the cap because he totally forgot that, well, each one of those first rounders equate for $6-7 million of the cap space.
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
Right.
so like, he's like, well, can we just reset the cap? We're like, no, trade off some of your, you know what I mean? Like, this is a business, buddy. Manage your books, pal,
Yeah.
What about you?
I mean, I think that I always kind of knew that it was a business to some extent. I think, when I first started watching sports, I mean, my dad told me, these guys get paid and, this is their job.
Right.
I always understood that. I started reading.
We also, not to cut you off, but we're also both, especially like when you were younger, it was kind of the beginning of that era. And then especially when, as I was growing up, we were kind of full swing. We're both from eras where, guys went from having to work off-season jobs just to get by to, being these huge multi-million-dollar athletes. You know what I mean? Like that's when guys like Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson and Shaquille O'Neal and all these guys were signing huge contracts, and these NFL players are signing big money contracts, and so they just started becoming more mainstream celebrities.
Yeah. And I think both of us, like, we came up in the era of free agency. We came up in the era where media was talking about the business of the game more often. I was going to say, I started reading, Sports Illustrated and a lot of sports magazines pretty early. And, they talked about that stuff, trades and free agency and contracts. And so I was always aware of that kind of stuff. And I remember, I don't know if you remember, I think it was, Sports Illustrated or something. They used to have this, it was like this documentary series or a video series about baseball. And it was called like When It Was a Game. And it was about that old era. The Lou Gehrig, Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle era, where I think for fans, it was a game. They didn't talk about the media didn't cover the business part as much, and so I think for fans, people always say they watch sports to escape, to escape reality or escape the real world or escape harsh realities of business or whatever. But I don't think that's realistic that we can do that.
Right.
But there was an era where I think, sports was more this kind of whimsical, fantasy. It was just a game, and it's not that anymore. So, but anyway, I think for me, when it kind of slapped me in the face that this is a business would be, I don't remember what happened first. So the Cleveland Browns leaving, because I grew up a Browns fan. Them leaving Cleveland in 95, I believe it was that. And then around the same time, like the Seattle Mariners, like almost left Seattle. Like,
right.
It got very close. That might've been before the Browns left. And there was also a time when the Seahawks were close to leaving Seattle. I think that might've been maybe the mid 90s or something like that.
Yeah, I think that was like right before they realigned the conferences or whatever, and then Seattle moved into the NFC.
Yeah. So I've either, followed teams or been in the same city with teams where this has happened multiple times, for me, so I had, the Mariners almost left, the Seahawks almost left, the Sonics did leave, and the Browns left. So this has happened to me before, so
right.
So I've just always been, aware that it was a business. But I'd say mid 90s, which would have made me early teens or something like that, was when it kind of slapped me like, okay, this is a business, and franchises don't care about the players, and they care about the general fan base, but they don't care about you individually, the fan.
Right.
And some people,
they love the community, but you, the guy, as individual human beings, they could give a shit less.
Right. And if you're wondering about that, go contact your favorite team about anything, about any personnel move or something, and see if they get back to you about it. They're not going to. So another thing that's kind of been in the headlines this week, in the NFL, we got Antonio Brown, and Des Bryant, both back in the NFL after taking some time off. Um, Also, Mike Tyson's coming back to boxing, we think, sometime this year.
Right.
I was thinking of, Michael Jordan makes his comeback. So these situations where somebody's been off for a year or two, or in Tyson's case, 10 or 15, however many years he's been out of it. What do you think is like the hardest sport to come back to after you've missed a long time?
I would have to say probably football, to be perfectly honest. Because I mean, the reality is like, if in basketball, if you lose your athleticism, you can, as we've seen, you can add to your bag of tricks. You can add a jump shot, right? You can add the ability to pass better, to be a better playmaker. Maybe you're not, you may not be the guy that's dunking anymore, that's sprinting up and down the court faster than everybody else, whatever. But there's a lot of guys who have been able to extend their career or come back and still play at an efficient level at the very least, right? Especially shooters, you're never going to lose your shot. Right. Baseball's another baseball would be a tough one. That'd be a close second, because that hand-eye coordination and being away from the game and having the ability to have that timing down, that's got to be tough. But when you take that and add the physical aspect, I would say fighting, but we've seen it happen numerous times in a lot of combat sports like that, where guys come out of retirement after X amount of years and they come back to fight again. Or, in the UFC, especially in boxing, we've seen
Mayweather, George Foreman. They won championships when they come.
Yeah, exactly. And these are guys that have taken time off, etc., and come back and still, fought at a high level. But I can't tell you the last time that I ever remember a football player, I mean, other than maybe Marshawn Lynch, but even then, he didn't come back Marshawn Lynch. You know what I mean? He didn't come back beast mode, and even still. So it's one of those things where not only do you have the mental aspect of it, right? But then like that physical aspect of it and getting your body into that playing shape. And the reality is that football, especially, like, you are just getting beat and beat and beat. And it takes such a heavy toll on your body, where it comes to a point where, like, a certain amount of time off is great for your body, because it's going to allow it to rest and recover and fully get healthy. Because, guys, a lot of the times these guys are not even going into the next season fully healthy. They've got some kind of nagging, lingering issue, whatever. And so, you get that time to get fully healthy, but that's a thin line to walk. And you go from, hey, I'm fully healthy, to, oh crap, if I get back on that field, I'm going to seriously risk injury. And so.
My dad always talks about, he says losing your shell, and is in relation to football players. If you're out of the game too long, you're used to getting hit, and you're used to that grind, and like ignoring those little pains that you just deal with. And if you're gone too long, you kind of have this. And my football career peaked in high school, and I know how it was,
That's what I was going to ask, if you played any school ball or anything like, because man, I remember for us, those first 2 weeks of spring training and whatnot, you were doing a lot of conditioning and a ton of hitting, because they were just trying to work you back
get you back used to hitting. And that's just taking a few months off, but if you take a year or two off, and I'm not speaking about, I think it's different when someone's injured because they're working to come back and they know they're coming back, so someone like Adrian Peterson, or even like Alex Smith, they, from the time they got hurt, they were like, well, I'm coming back. And
Right.
so when they get healthy enough to start working, they're
Nothing
working towards
changed
that
in
goal.
their regimen.
Yes. What I'm talking about is more like someone who's been retired, who didn't think they were coming back. They kind of relaxed. They weren't working out as much. And then they decide, okay, I want to come back now.
Right.
I think physically, yeah, football is the toughest one. I think mentally, or kind of like with the timing we talked about, I would think it'd be baseball. I feel like if you're away from that game for long enough, you can really lose some of that timing with hitting the ball, with fielding, just all the the kind of mental stuff that goes into baseball, the coordination, the timing, and all that. Like,
Well, and hitting
I
the
think that
ball
could be really tough
especially
too.
because, I
Mhm.
mean, bro, we're talking freaking milliseconds of a
Mhm.
difference. And when you swing that bat is going to be all the difference in the world of whether you swing and miss, of
Mhm.
whether you hit a home run, of whether you ground into a double play, of whether you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
do you remember that old Bernie Mac movie, Mr.
I was
3000?
just thinking about that. I was going to ask you
Yes.
if you've seen that
Remember
movie.
in the
Yeah,
beginning,
yeah.
he drops the beer and he
Mhm.
catches it and he's like, yep, still got it. Not a problem,
Yeah.
because he had taken all that time off. And,
Mhm.
then they found out he had stats that were double counted and stuff. And so
Yeah.
he goes, yep, still got it. And then as they walk out of the bar, they show the beer and it's squirting beer out, out of the side of the glass or whatever,
Mhm.
because that millisecond, that difference in the millisecond meant the difference between catching that beer clean and cracking that glass. And he cracked the glass, and
Mhm.
obviously if you saw the movie, you saw all of his struggles, etc. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And
got
I
to be
think
very tough to get that back.
as far as like combat sports and fight sports, I think that one difference there where maybe it's not as hard is because you can choose who you fight when you come back. You know,
I have
you
always
can.
wondered that, though, because it seems like, especially like those guys fight until they're freaking old, dude.
Mm,
And granted, I know that not every single guy, just like in any sport, probably a majority of the guys are, retiring when they're younger. But man, it just seems like more and more those top level, top tier guys, or even those middle of the road guys are. I mean, they're fighting until they're freaking 40, 45 years old.
yeah.
And you wouldn't think that, in those, when they're literally getting just smashed in the
Mm.
face. You know what I mean?
I wonder if that's because the money is so much more now that it's harder to walk away. You know,
Yeah.
it's, I mean, on one level, you could say, okay, you've made so much money in your career, you should be able to retire and be fine. On the other hand, if someone's offering you $5 million for one more fight, that's tough to turn down. like,
But how
um,
many guys are like, at least nowadays in this
mhm,
generation, in this era of combat sports, especially with the popularity that it's gained?
mhm,
Um, how many guys are we seeing that are like punch drunk? You know what I mean? Like, I remember
yeah,
Chuck Liddell kind of seemed a little
mhm,
punch drunk, after he retired and whatever. But I mean, nothing like we saw, in guys through the 90s and whatever,
right.
when that was first kind of becoming a thing, and dudes couldn't even talk straight, and
Mhm,
just out of
yeah.
their mind kind of
And
crap.
that could be, advances that we've had in, medicine and training and nutrition and, people who are helping these guys recognize like, okay, it's time to go.
Pull
Right.
back, yeah.
Yeah. I've never been one to say an athlete should retire, except for in the combat sports, because I feel
Right.
like you're playing with your life, at some
Yeah,
point
no, it's
if you're going on too long.
incredibly
But yeah,
dangerous.
when people say, who was it? Tony Parker in the NBA. When he used to walk away, he's not his prime anymore. He doesn't want to go out playing for a different team or as a backup.
Right,
Or
right.
if you want to play, if you want to compete, and someone's willing to pay you, and you still like doing it, just do it. Do it till
Yeah.
you're 50 years old. Because the fans who are telling you to not do this to protect their memories and protect their feelings,
Their
they're not
nostalgia.
gonna be there to help you out when you're retired. They're not
Right.
going to be there to talk to you when you're missing the game and you wish like, man, I wish I had come back for 1 or 2 more years. If hopefully
Same
you
thing
don't.
happened with Ichiro. I mean,
Yeah.
people, dude, I saw people all over like Facebook and stuff saying how he was being selfish and this and that. Like,
Mhm.
Maybe the guy just still enjoys playing baseball. And yeah,
Right.
if the Marlins were willing to pay him to do it,
Mhm.
why the hell wouldn't he?
Yeah. And hopefully, the athlete doesn't go broke, but if they do, or if they get in some kind of financial trouble and they left a few $1,000,000 on the table from retiring at their peak and, not playing out the string, those fans aren't going to be there to help them out.
No.
The ones who told him to retire, they're not going to be
Right.
there to like, okay, let's hope you get back on your feet. They're
Right.
gonna,
You gonna
honestly,
co-sign on a
they're
car
gonna
for him or what?
no. And if anything, they're gonna laugh at him and
Yeah.
say, you're dumb.
I
How could
can't
blow
believe
all
you did
money?
that.
Right.
Yeah.
So sticking with this kind of this episode theme seems to be like the business of sports.
Right.
We want to go into the Sports 101 segment. This is where, if you've seen our previous episodes, this is where Austin puts on his professor hat with the with the what am I thinking of? The pipe. Yeah.
Sure.
The hat, the pipe, and the glasses, and he teaches us about sports. He gives us an education on a particular topic. So this week, I believe you're going to tell us about the franchise tag.
Yes, about the franchise tag. Now, first, let me say this. I would absolutely love if our editor could have a little like professor cap drop down onto my head and even kind of give us like a little whiteboard that says Sports 101 on it. That would be great. But I digress. Anyways,
Yeah.
So yes, excuse me, we are talking about the franchise tag. So you hear this in pretty much every sport. It's a pretty simple thing to understand. Most everybody who's into sports of any kind, and again, keep in mind, Sports 101 is for those of you who may just hope to get a better understanding on different aspects of sports that you may not necessarily research yourself, or maybe you're too embarrassed to ask or whatever, and so that's what I'm here to help you with. And so a franchise tag is an exclusive tag. That means that a team will pay the player no less than the average of the top 5 salaries at the player's position, or 120% of the player's previous salary. Now, that specifically is talking about the NFL franchise tag, and that's pretty much the same across the board in any sport that utilizes the franchise tag. You just hear about it more often in the NFL. So the big one recently, especially this last offseason, was Dak Prescott's. And this is just a perfect example of, where is the franchise tag beneficiary? Or who does it benefit? It benefits both sides, really. So Dak Prescott is the poster child for this. Kirk Cousins was a few years ago as well, but Dak Prescott probably more so than even Kirk Cousins was. So the reality is that Dak came into this season with a lot of question marks around him, whether he was that guy. We saw the numbers, all of those things. We just haven't seen quite the team's success, which you may or may not blame directly to him or tie directly to him. But at the end of the day, he plays the most important position in that sport. And so he has to be held accountable for some of that. Anyways, the point is that Prescott was seeking somewhere in the neighborhood of $40 million. A lot of people think that's crazy, but hey, look at this. At the end of the day, like some quarterback, whether it's Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, whoever, Trevor Lawrence, if he comes into the league and just freaking kills it.
You didn't name Mitch Trubisky.
Oh yeah, well, I wouldn't have picked up his third-year option if I could. No, I'm just kidding. But anyways,
Sam Darnold. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Super out on that. But possibly Trevor Lawrence if he becomes everything that we hope he will. My point is that is where the market is going. We're going to see a tiny bit of regression this next offseason just because the salary cap has to get cut back. But the reality is that this cap moves up every single year, right? And that's why these players ask for more money every single year. And eventually, might I say, somebody is going to have the brass balls to tell a team, you pay me $40 million or I will find someone who will. And that guy could be Dak Prescott. We don't know. But that bar will be set. Just like Russell Wilson was the first one to set the bar at what, $35 million, right? When he became the highest paid. And it's funny, I took that pause because to go on a teensy tiny little tangent, I MF'd Andrew Luck so hard when he signed his contract because he screwed everybody in that quarterback class. Unless an elite quarterback was coming up to have his contract done, Andrew Luck took less money than he should have. If I remember correctly, at the time he signed like for $25 million a year when everybody thought it was going to be $30 million a year or whatever. But he had the chance to set that market for these quarterbacks, and he didn't do it. And you know what? If you're into the hometown discount thing or whatever, by all means, I get it. But I'm pro player. So for me, I think these guys need to get their money while they can. Anyways, the point is that the market will be set at $40 million eventually. Dak Prescott just wants to be the first guy to do that. The Cowboys are saying, hey, I'm not totally sure that I want to invest all that money and utilize that much cap space because I don't know if you're the guy that's going to drag us to the Super Bowl and drag us to title wins. You know, I don't know. And we've already paid these other guys. And do we really want to do we want to strangle ourselves with cap issues by giving you that kind of money? So what do? They put the exclusive franchise tag on Dak Prescott. So there's two tags. There's the exclusive franchise tag that means that you cannot receive any kind of offers. You are our player. You're staying put at least for this year, and that's it. And this is what you're making. The average of 5 quarterbacks, of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league, that's what your salary is whatever their salary is averaged at, which is $33 million. Now there is the non-exclusive franchise tag, and what that means is that you can tag the player. In Dak Prescott's case, you take a little bit less money. He would have taken $28 million. I believe it moves to the top 10. I would have to double check that, but yeah, it would have moved down to $28 million. Now, what that would have done is it would have allowed Dak Prescott to receive offers from other teams. If other teams want, the Jets or the Dolphins or, the Titans, maybe one of these teams that might have thought that he was a better fit for what they currently got going on. Not throwing shade at Tannehill. He's doing great. But Dak Prescott, he should be considered amongst that elite class of quarterbacks, right? At least in my opinion. Anyways, so what that does is it allows these teams to negotiate. And if a team at that point said, with the non-exclusive tag, if a team at that point said, you know what, Dak, I will pay you $40 million, then before Dak is allowed to sign that contract, he has to go back to the Cowboys and say, hey, Cincinnati or Miami or whomever offered me $40 million. So either you can match that or I'm going to go sign with them. And the Cowboys would have to have that opportunity. Oh, I'm losing my voice. They would have to have that opportunity to either match it or send him on his way, right? So
like restricted free agency in basketball.
Exactly like that. And so what the franchise tag does is it's created to help with parity in the league, right? So that every couple years, the best player on your team can't just bounce for more dough. And that's kind of, it's supposed to help create parity so that, yeah, if you have a guy that, or say you're in a bit of a cap issue and say you have to pay your quarterback $40 million, right? But you have a receiver or a safety or a running back, right, that you really want to keep. But, hey, I can't pay you this breakout superstar money because I've got to take care of these couple guys. However, next year we'll have the cap space to do that. So what you do is a lot of the times you can save yourself money, right, by taking a less valuable position and franchise tagging them because you have a player that you don't necessarily want to lose. Maybe you're not totally in love with or you maybe need to see another year out of. Or like I said, you're just in a position where, hey, I can't pay you this year, but I sure as hell don't want to lose you. So you franchise tag them, and then you keep them, and then you move forward. Now that can go up. You can franchise tag a player two years in a row. The second year, it goes from 120%, I believe, to like 135. I mean, it jumps quite a bit, you know. Or it takes the top 5 average, and then you like add 5% to it, if I remember correctly. So, I mean, it does increase. And so where it might be beneficial to, or is beneficial to the player, is that contract is 100% guaranteed. Every dime from a franchise tag is 100% guaranteed. So Dak Prescott is collecting all $33 million this year, right? Obviously, there's loopholes like conduct detrimental to the team, etc., but 100% guaranteed. So it could behoove them to go out and play another year like Dak Prescott did and possibly risk injury, but knowing that you're getting guaranteed money. And personally, I think Prescott proved himself to be a $40 million quarterback, so he might have done the right thing by signing that, staying loyal, and hoping that he gets taken care of. But that is Sports 101. That is the franchise tag, and I hope you feel a little bit smarter.
Now, players generally, it seems they don't like being franchise tagged, even though it comes with this big salary. And I think maybe the calling it the franchise tag, maybe the intent was like to make them feel special. Like, you're our franchise guy.
Right.
But do players just not like it because it takes away the ability to get the long-term deal? And they just
they lose their free market.
Yeah.
And that's what it is, you know, and in this day and age, that's, you know, players especially, they want to have that freedom to get a bidding war going and shop teams and see who's going to pay them the most money, as well as they want to test their value. Okay. And not only that, but most of these players, I mean, you're once you're drafted, especially if you're a first-round draft pick, you're locked into a contract for 4 years, 5 if they pick up your option. And so you're getting, you know, if in that time you've been this breakout superstar and you've just been absolutely crushing it, well, I mean, I don't, you know, if you say you play those 5 years and then you're like, okay, cool, I'm going to sign this big, huge, you know, legendary, historical contract. I know it's going to happen. And then you get franchise tagged. Well, like in Dak Prescott's case, you know, like I said, he's a $40 million quarterback. He lost $7 million, you know. And that's a give and take thing, again, because his contract is guaranteed. But still, you know, he lost the opportunity for $7 million. And for some guys, again, because there are some positions, there's not near as much. I mean, your drop off is huge. You know what I mean? I think receiver, that's kind of one of those positions. Defensive back, as we've seen, is one of those positions. Pass rush a bit, you know, but especially guys like wide receivers, safeties, middle line or linebackers and running backs, especially because they know that if I'm at the top of my game, my contract value of what I could be worth or what I could be making is substantially more, millions and millions of dollars more than what a franchise tag is, because, you know, all these other 5 guys, unfortunately, had to play the old market. So you get no opportunity to set a new market. You just have to play into the old market, despite the fact that you've been out playing every single one of them, you know?
Okay. That's going to bring me to, I'm going to talk, because I want to talk about a player who in the NBA, he was one of those.
I'm really excited for this one, by the way. I freaking loved following this player.
Yeah.
I'll let you get through the thing.
Yeah, he was one of a franchise player in the NBA, and he was someone that he was able to sign one of those big $100 million plus deals, and someone who had a major injury, kind of not on a Dak Prescott level, but had one of those major injuries, which is the exact reason why guys want long-term guaranteed deals, because this can happen to you. You can be at the top of the peak of the league, top of your game, and the next thing you know, it's over. That player, who I'm going to tell my kids about someday, is Gilbert Arenas. Now, mid 2000s, Gilbert Arenas was one of the best players in the world, but one of the best guards in the NBA. Famously, he dropped 60 points on, well, it wasn't on Kobe, but it was on Kobe's Lakers. Dropped 60 points in a game, averaging 25 to 30 points a game, all-star. I think he made some all-NBA teams. Was one of the best guys in the league. Now, Gilbert hasn't played in the NBA since 2012 when he had this brief stint with the Memphis Grizzlies. One reason he kind of popped up on my radar this week is I'm working on a piece for one of the sites that I write for, bealstreetbears.com. Check that out. It's a Memphis Grizzlies blog. I gotta have our editor one day just put up all the URLs to all the sites I write for, in case you guys are interested in reading my stuff.
That'd be awesome.
So I was kind of looking into Gilbert's brief time with the Grizzlies, and I also came across this recent video clip because he does a podcast, and he was talking about why players should question their coaches, and was essentially talking about, not every NBA coach knows exactly what they're doing, and they kind of have these old school ideas. And when he was playing, he challenged them. He would ask his coach why. Why are we doing this? How come when we do a pick and roll, why do you want me to pass to the big man when I have a mismatch? And I posted that video in one of the Facebook sports groups that you and I are in. And I said, Gilbert Arenas, he doesn't get enough credit for his basketball IQ. And I knew that well before this video came out. Back when Gilbert was at his peak, I did a couple interviews with him. I did a couple magazine stories on him. I want to say one of them was he was reaching kind of the peak of the league. I think the other one was maybe right before, right after he had that first kind of major knee injury. But during one of the times I interviewed Gilbert, I asked him about the perception at the time that he was like a gunner. He kind of had a reputation for, he shoots too much. This was kind of the shoot first point guard era.
Yeah.
And some of the basketball purists didn't like that. They didn't like guys like Iverson and Steve Francis and Stephon Marbury, who were point guards, but they were scorers. And, they felt, they should be passing the ball more, and they should be like more of a John Stockton type of guard. And Gilbert Arenas was not that. Gilbert Arenas was a scorer. Gilbert Arenas gave you buckets. So he got his assist. He could pass, but he scored.
He got his 20 plus a night.
Right. And so people, they called him a gunner and a ball hog. And I asked him about that. What do you think of this perception of you? And I remember, he went on to explain his game and why he shot as much as he did and why he attacked as much as he did. And his basketball IQ blew me away. The way that he talked about, time and situation, he was just, running it down. He's like, okay, if there's 4 minutes left in the quarter and we're up by 7 and the other team is in the bonus, that's when I'm going to attack because I'm going to get to the free throw line. And, because this guy, if he has this many fouls, I know that he can't guard me too hard. Otherwise, he's going to send me to the line. He's going to get himself in foul trouble. And then if I do that, by the end of the quarter, we're up by 12. And now, we've got the game won. And it surprised me. It shouldn't have, but I think, I was, younger. It just surprised me how well thought out everything he did on the court was. He wasn't just recklessly hogging the ball and just trying to get his and just trying to score and get his numbers. Like all of this there was a method to Gil's madness. All of this had a reason why he did everything. It reminded me a lot of when people play these clips of like LeBron James, like explaining everything that happened in the sequence. Gilbert, he reminded me of that. He can do that. There wasn't any like just random, I just did that because I want to shoot the ball.
Yeah, Kobe was the same way. Photographic memory and could recall that stuff. Just play for play. And I'll tell you what, any sports nuts watching this, like hardcore sports nuts, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, and of anybody that has ever played any of these major sports at a high level, at a high professional level like that, even if they weren't a Gilbert Arenas or a LeBron James or whatever, pick their brain. I mean, these guys are like, I'll tell you, I've talked to numerous guys that were practice squad players and this and that and the other. And I mean, it's incredibly interesting hearing them like break down film and break down tape and this play and that play. And I mean, it's amazing. Like, you think you're freaking amazed by Tony Romo. I couldn't imagine having Gilbert Arenas break down the last 4 minutes of his game. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God.
It's why, I really have always disliked kind of that dumb jock stereotype, because, these guys they're very smart. They're very intelligent about the game. And, everybody is smart at different things. And, just because, he isn't the smartest, I'm not talking about Gilbert Arenas specifically, but just any athlete, they're just because they didn't go to college doesn't mean they're not smart. Just because they left college after their freshman year doesn't mean they're not smart. Like you said, ask them about their game, ask them about their sport, ask them why they did a certain thing at a certain point during the game, and they're going to give you an explanation. And it's going to be like you can learn something from them.
Yeah, typically it'll be very far and away from what your assumption or what the actual media narrative was. Believe that.
Exactly. And for someone that is on Arenas' level, I feel like the action on the court for them, it unfolds like a math equation, and you can see them, you could see it, kind of all playing out for them like they expected it to play out. And that's why they're so precise with their movements. And that's why they're so sharp with their game, whether it's LeBron, whether it's Rajon Rondo, whether it's Kobe Bryant, John Stockton, Steve Nash, any of those guys. So anyway, that's the side of Gilbert Arenas that didn't get talked about enough when he was playing. One thing that did get talked about was the infamous gun incident when he was playing with the Washington Wizards and he got into an altercation with a teammate. He brought a gun to the locker room. It became a legal case. He went to court. It was kind of that and the injuries were just kind of the beginning of the end for him. And he fell off just as fast as he rose, to being one of the top players in the game. It was like, just like that, he was gone. And I've heard people say that Gilbert Arenas is dumb because of what he did. I think that Gilbert Arenas is a very smart guy who just did a very dumb thing.
Absolutely.
And when I talk about in this segment things that I want to tell my kids about, one thing I'm going to tell them is someone like Gilbert Arenas, like, don't think that you're so smart that you can't do anything stupid.
Yep.
He had, we would say, everything in the world going for him. Even with those injuries, he could have hung around in the league and came back. But, kind of thing kind of really hastened his exit from that perch that he was on. But in addition to that, one thing I would just want to share with my kids about Gilbert Arenas was just that basketball IQ. And whatever sport they play, when I played, I played football and I ran track and, I played basketball, on the playground and stuff. But when I was closer to my athletic peak, I didn't think the game like I should have. I didn't have that IQ. And I didn't take advantage of the opportunity to like utilize it. When I played football, like looking back on it, I wasn't constantly aware of down and distance and how much time was on the clock. And, I know that this quarterback likes to do this and this receiver likes to do this. And like, it was just, you're just kind of in the moment and you're just kind of reacting. And
I think you just hope that all your training and practice just kind of takes over.
Yeah. And I feel like, and it's very easy to slip into that. And so I really like admire those athletes that really think the game on this high level. And that's something that, if my kids play sports, I'm going to try to guide them and kind of encourage them to like always be thinking the game. Don't just be reacting, always think, always have your IQ on point, always like, know what you're doing and why you're doing it. And just always be thinking, because you can it'll help you be more successful, at this stage in life. I mean, I do some martial arts. I do Muay Thai. I'm not near my physical peak anymore, but I do have more of a sharp mental approach to what I'm doing. When I'm sparring or whatever, I'm thinking about it a lot more than I thought about football. Now I wish I had kind of done that when I was young, because it might make the game more complicated because there's more to think about, but in a sense it makes it easier to succeed when you're just using your brain. This is
just able to slow things down and just kind of, yep.
right.
I'm right there with you, man. A lot of stuff for me. I mean, I did, especially in football, because I was so into it, and I've always watched tape, and I've always, that kind of thing, the whole mental side of it. But I mean, yeah, I definitely look back and like, man, if I put as much into the knowledge of everything as like I do now into just learning and understanding and knowing, etc., man, I might have been able to be something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, could have got to a higher level than you did, whether that was college or, just been a better high school player, whatever level you got to. It's like you think the game and you really, just get your knowledge up and remember to use that on the court or on the field or in the ring or whatever it is. Like, it's going to take you farther.
Right.
So anyway, with that, I think we're going to be getting out of here kind of soon, but I wanted to go to our cold take segment. As we've explained before, both of us, we're active in, on sports social media, Facebook groups, sports Twitter, watching sports shows on TV. And so every day we're going to run across someone saying something dumb about sports, trying to have a hot take, something controversial, and making themselves look ridiculous. So do you have a cold take to share with us this week?
The cold take for this week, Amar, is the Cowboys will be better without Dak Prescott. Yes, and I will not name names. It is someone who is in media, but I don't want to bust toss them because I do actually respect their opinion on a lot of things. But you're wrong. And I the minute I read it, that was the first. I was like, you are so freaking wrong. It's just not even worth getting into the debate and argument. Now, I understand where the sentiment comes from, but the problem is, and the reality is that Ezekiel Elliott has shown since the beginning of this year, he is not the same player this year. He is an absolute shell of himself. He's shown signs of being the old Ezekiel Elliott, but he is not that guy this year for whatever reason. Whatever's going on with him, he's not that dynamic, scary running back that he has been since he's entered the league. And so the thought process is that you rely on the run game, hope the defense plays a little better, and you've got a guy like an Andy Dalton, that can manage the game properly with all of the offensive weapons that team has, which it's incredibly talented. But here's the reality. With Dak Prescott playing at the level that he did before his injury, and they had one win to show of it, two after that game that he couldn't even finish, like, that's a problem. And to say that you take away arguably their best player at the most important position on the field and say that they're going to get better, sorry, sir. Nope. Cold take. Calling you out on that one.
Did they watch the Cardinals game and the Washington game?
Yeah, so this was like actually I thought I might have said this one already because this was a cold take that I read a couple weeks ago.
Oh, so this was before. Okay.
Yeah, it was like not too long after the injury, but it just kind of blew me away. I was like, dude, there's like, it's not will not happen. There's because no way in hell.
These performances they've had since, you could have seen those coming. I don't know anybody
absolutely
that was like, they're going to continue putting up 25, 30 points a game with Andy Dalton.
Even if Andy Dalton didn't get hurt. Like, there's no way whatsoever that Andy Dalton was going to take this team to the promised land. And like I said, Ezekiel Elliott clearly isn't the guy that he has been for whatever reason. Their defense stinks. And guys, football is a very quick-moving sport. And just because a team 3 years ago had the absolute best, most dominating offensive line in the league doesn't mean that they do now. And that's the problem that we run into, is that these teams get these little cliche titles, the Seahawks offensive line sucks. It's terrible. Well, despite giving up similar amount of sacks, it's actually they have their players on the offensive line are ranked in the PFF rankings higher than they ever have been before. It's the best offensive line Russell Wilson's arguably ever had in his career. Okay, but anyways, on the flip side, Dak Prescott came into the league with a team that had easily far and above, with a gap, the best offensive line in football. That is no longer the case, okay? And that's probably one of the reasons why Zeke is playing so terribly or not as good, right? And so again, a not so great offensive line or not as great offensive line, a running back who's struggling, a defense that's terrible, and a quarterback who is dragging this team as much as he could offensively, and then you lose him and the team's all of a sudden just going to click and get better? Cold take. Sorry. Don't work.
Yeah. Mine's also related to NFL quarterbacks. Also just a too soon take. Someone said that the Patriots need to cut Cam Newton because he's had a few bad games, and not bench him. They need to cut him.
Yeah,
that was I was just like, I don't know how to respond to that. I'm like, have you not?
I also saw that Bill Belichick is washed up and needs to retire.
Oh yeah, I've heard that. Yeah. Something that actually I wanted to bring this up last week, and because it's not exactly a cold take, but it was just, I'd say, like, bad fan behavior. It's something I just wanted to just point out. So I think you might have seen this. Russell Westbrook, he went on Twitter, I think, or Instagram or whatever, posted a picture of his kids, and he said, "My why," as WHY, like this is why I do what I do for my kids, right? Yep. And this fan commented under that, like, work on your jump shot,
right?
Like, okay, yes. Russell Westbrook as a player has some flaws. Yep. One of those flaws is at times his jump shot and his decision making of when to take said jump shot. But if a guy is sharing, like, these are my kids, this is why I do what I do, this is why, this is what I love and all that kind of stuff. Like, there's a time and a place, and that's not the time and the place for the snarky, what you need to do is work on your jump shot.
Bro, that's like me sharing pictures of my kids while we're having a blast in the backyard wrestling around, and somebody comments, "You need to sell more cars."
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah. And just, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this person who said that doesn't have as good of a jump shot as Russell Westbrook does. And that even if he does need to work on his jump shot, Russell Westbrook is still one of the best players in the world, and still, a guy that averaged a triple-double 3 years in a row not too long ago, and who can do a lot of other things very well on the basketball court that makes him one of the best players in the world. And so, yeah, he could work on his jump shot. He could work on, a couple of things, but he's good enough. And if those kids are his why, he's doing very well for them.
Absolutely.
He's coming through for them. He's delivering. He has nothing to be ashamed about, or he should feel bad about, for his career and, like, making it for those kids.
Yeah.
And so just
those kids and their kids will never want for anything in their life.
Right.
So,
and so
doing pretty good for a guy without a jump shot.
Exactly. Yeah. And so when fans like come on, to social media with that kind of stuff, I just, like, gotta shake my head at him. I'm just like, come on, man. Like, just be a decent person sometimes. It's not that hard to do. Again, like we said earlier, athletes are people too. So you want to go ahead and take us out of here for this episode?
Hell yeah. And another episode in the books of Bring Your A Game. Again, I am Austin. Catch me on Twitter at Austin Snyder90, on Instagram at Austin Snyder12, and just look up Austin Snyder on Facebook for some fire memes, dank gaming content, and sports. And as always, you can find Amar.
You can find me on Twitter, on Instagram at Amar_206. You can also find me on Facebook. Just look up Amar Burton for what would I give you? Some links to some articles that I write and things like that, and baby pictures and
he just really wants you guys to read his articles. So.
Yes,
which are very good, by the way. Definitely check them out. I really enjoy them. So
we'll have some links put up of those. But so that's it for this week. We will be back in another week with some more content for you. And how do you always take us out? What's the outro?
Bye.